Well, good evening, everybody. Welcome to tonight's webinar. My name is Dr. Stephen Moore, and I'm the Director of Business Development for Healthcare Professional Network Alliance. I'm very excited to present some great information here tonight on how to improve the health of your patients through nutritional intervention. I've always, my background is not in optometry, my background is a chiropractor. And so nutrition and prevention has always been something that's been very passionate about me and how I like to take care of others' health. And it's one of the things that's really missing in healthcare as a whole. And there's so many great applications based on a lot of the research that's coming out on the role of nutrition and eye health. And so I've been working on this project now for about 14 years, speaking to all different types of professionals, a lot of medical doctors, as very excited to be working with a lot of optometrists now. Because the technology that we'll talk about here tonight actually was developed by the NIH originally to screen for risk factors of macular degeneration. And we're going to talk a lot about the science of it. And so tonight we've got Dr. Jerome Sherman, and he's a distinguished professor over at SUNY at New York University. He is one of the most sought after speakers in the United States in the optometry field. And it's been an honor to really get to know him over the last several years. And Dr. Sherman, we're really excited for you to present some of this great research. I know you're really excited about some of the new studies that you've come across recently. And you can go ahead and take it away as far as discussing carotenoids, the eye and beyond.
Thank you, Steve, for the invite for doing this. Let's see if this actually works. It goes in both directions. Okay, carotenoids, the eye and beyond. Above, you can actually see, is AMD in your DNA? And that's true. Certainly your genes, your genetic profile has a lot to do with it. But beyond your genetic profile, you can still do things with dietary supplements and good habits, good health habits, which can actually reduce the risk of macular degeneration very significantly. We're going to hear a little bit about genetic testing, which is becoming more and more important. And we now know that new knowledge and new technology creates additional opportunities, but also new responsibilities for all of us who see patients. AMD, as most of you know, is the leading cause of blindness in the Western Hemisphere. So it's something we all have to be concerned about. In this audience, I don't know the age group, but if you're over 60, you have about 1 in 10 chance of having AMD. If you're over 70, it's just about a 25% chance, 1 in 4. That's really quite significant. And we have 700 carotenoids, and these are these pretty colors in vegetables and fruits that we see. There's 700 in nature. About 15 carotenoids make it into the human body, which can be measured in the serum. And of interest, 3 of them are very important for macular health. Those are lutein, zeaxanthin, and mesozeaxanthin. And those are not found throughout the entire retina, pretty much found in the central 5 to 10 degrees. And here we're looking at one of the major causes of age-related macular degeneration. We have these drusen-like deposits under the retinal pigment epithelium. A lot of this is cholesterol, calcium, lots of different components of these. But drusen often lead to reduction in visual acuity, as you know. So this patient would have intermediate AMD based upon just one drusen of that size would put this patient in that category. Technology is important. We just showed you some OCTs, but in addition to OCTs, it's important to know that we have ultra-wide field imaging. Autofluorescence is very useful. We have microcurrentry that we sometimes recommend. I actually do recommend home devices where we can actually test for vernal acuity. Patients with intermediate AMD can get one of these, and it's covered by Medicare. Some of my patients have it, and they haven't paid any money at all for it. So that's something to keep in mind. You'll see a picture of that coming up a little bit later. So technology really is important. If you're really serious about sort of an AMD center of excellence, you really want to have the appropriate technology. One of my patients, going back to 2013, he had dry macular degeneration, lots of drusen in both posterior poles, as you're going to see. And he shows up one day and he says, "Hey, doc, I can't see out of my right eye." And of course, most of us know that smoking increases the risk of AMD by about a factor of 3. So here he is in 09 with drusen and in 11 with drusen. Of course, we try to get him to take nutraceuticals, to lose weight, to exercise, all the typical things. And here he is when he showed up that day with Marlboro in his pocket telling me he can't see out of his right eye. And I spoke with him about smoking. Of course, that's something that you keep on trying, but sometimes you never succeed. In any case, this is now not dry macular degeneration anymore. And if we look at an OCT of that, we'll see that he actually has a large fibroglial scar and actually has fluid present under the neurosensory retina. So he had choroidal neovascularization, which bled, and now he still has some fluid left, a little bit of hemorrhage, but a lot of this is fibroglial tissue, and the photoreceptors have been destroyed. So he'll never see well out of the side. Yes, he went through 20 anti-VEGF injections. We followed him very carefully, and he developed a wet macular degeneration in the second eye. It was treated sooner in the second eye, so that was really helpful. Going back to genetic testing for a moment, there's a really important article that was published in December of 2017, and it's by some really top people. I won't go into the names. It was published in perhaps the best journal on the planet, National Academy of Science, publications of the National Academy, or proceedings of the National Academy of Science. And it tells us that genetic testing is essential to identify the 12 or 13 to 19% of patients with intermediate AMD who will go ahead and progress at 3x the rate, 3 times the rate of patients taking actually controlled. So if they take ARIDs, they're actually going to do worse. So there are bad genetic profiles, and we know what the bad genetic profiles are. So this group is telling us we want to do genetic testing to find out if patients have 2 complement factor H high-risk alleles and no ARMS2 risk alleles. This specific genetic profile increases the risk of developing age-related macular degeneration if you take ARIDs above comparing that to just a placebo. So we know that the problem is really zinc. These patients are zinc sensitive with this genetic profile. And we also know that a lot of us are prescribing 80 milligrams of zinc, and that's really far too high for anybody. There's absolutely no reason for that. The ARIDS 2 told us that 25 milligrams is as good as 80. So zinc is something you have to consider, and zinc does relate to the genetic profile. A little article that we wrote talking about zinc and even a little bit of copper, and you really have to get the right dosage. You don't want to go too high, you don't want to go too low. They're very, very important, but figuring out the right dosage is really critical. The only genetic test out there for AMD is available through Arctic DX, and we use it here at SUNY, and we were just going through some results with 50 patients that we've done in the last several months. And of interest, it's something that we find out that most patients, you tell them a little bit about genetic testing, they say yes. 49 out of the last 50 that we recommended genetic testing to because they had intermediate AMD said yes. Only one said, I'll think about it. And this sort of gives you that point. You don't look anything like that long-haired, skinny kid I married 25 years ago. I need a DNA sample to make sure it's still you. So typically, patients accept genetic testing. This concept of zinc we mentioned isn't actually from the ARIDS 2 results. It's at 80 versus 25. ARIDS 2 looked at that. And if you go back, I'm not sure if it's not really showing it. This is not blowing up as it should. But it's telling us there's no difference between 80 milligrams and 25 milligrams. So certainly you want to use less. But PreserVision uses 80, and I think that's a big mistake. Of course, they have a patent for 80, and they do not have a patent for 25. Recommended daily allowance is between 9 and 15. I would say 25 is probably very safe, but stay away from the 80. It turns out if you take these macular carotenoids and you do cognitive function testing, you'll find out that patients with high levels of carotenoids in the brain actually function better on cognitive tests, which is pretty amazing. And there are a whole series of those articles. This one was published 10 days ago. That's why I show you that we're really trying to be recent. And it tells us that the macular carotenoids are associated with cognitive function in pre-adolescent children. So the higher the amount of macular carotenoids, the higher the cognitive function scores, which is pretty amazing, I think. So it's something to keep in mind. So it's not only for macular degeneration, it's actually for lots of other things, lots of disorders in the body, as we'll talk about, and certainly even cognitive function, which I think surprises a lot of people. A paper, or actually a presentation at ARVO about a year and a half ago, using a scanner, and here's a scanner. This is a student of mine, and here's her mom, who's an MD, she's an internist, and she's measuring her daughter's carotenoid levels. It's a 30-second test, non-invasive, reproducible, and gives us a lot of information about carotenoids in the body. The carotenoids in the palm, which is what we're really doing here, correlates very highly with carotenoids in the serum. So if you spend $500 to do a serum test, draw blood, and measure carotenoid levels in the serum, that's $500, not covered by any insurance company I know about, and this is actually the 30-second test that highly correlates with it. So a simple test.
Okay, it looks like we lost Jerry here, so we'll wait a minute here, and hopefully Jerry will get plugged back in. We will get this fixed here real quick. Okay, there you are.
Are we back?
We are.
Okay, I'm not sure what happened, but you tell me later. The objective hand scanner is actually better than the subjective macroscope quantify and densitometer for estimating macular pigment. So remarkably, you can use this technology, and this will give us a reading which correlates to the macular pigment, which is very important. Again, that would be the lutein zeaxanthin and meso that we talked about before. So here it is, Sir Raymond, this fellow won a Nobel Prize for this, Sir C.V. Raman spectroscopy, and what we're doing is introducing blue light, okay, and carotenoids will absorb the blue light and then emit green light. And in reality, the more carotenoids you have, the more green light's going to come back. So that's actually what it's measuring. So it's actually putting out a source, and it's going to measure what comes back. Now, the carotenoids are allegedly, according to this fellow who won a Nobel Prize for this, the only thing in the human body that will actually absorb light at this wavelength and give it off at this wavelength. So it really tells us about the carotenoids in the skin, but that, again, highly correlates with the carotenoids in the serum in the blood. Okay, so low scores you don't want. You want high scores. It's high, the higher the score, the better. So we test all of our students. Here, I'll show you a graph in just a couple of moments. One of our students that didn't do particularly well, and a vicious. You hear me? This student didn't do well on the test, and sure enough, I picked her. An hour later, I see she's eating donuts. And she told me, oh, she bought the donuts in the morning and she's not going to do it anymore. And in reality, her low score, she got really low scores. We did it a couple of times, and lower than pretty much everybody else in her class. She then decided to change her behavior. And she no longer has, a dozen donuts for lunch, which obviously isn't the best thing to do. So here's our class, one of our recent classes, and she's over here with low carotenoid scores. You want to be over here. And actually, we have a lot of students who do extremely well. They're in this platinum area. The blue's very, very good. Green's okay. You don't want to be in the red. You probably don't want to be in the orange. And yellow is like barely acceptable. So you want to be in this range over here. So anything under 20,000 is really not a good score. Okay, if we look at allegedly 7.5 million patients where this was looked at, the mean skin carotenoid score is about 30,000. Okay, and if you're obese, that seems to reduce it a little bit. If you eat really well, lots of fruits and vegetables, that increases it, higher numbers. If you then take some of these nutraceuticals like LifePak Nano and still eat really well, you get very much higher. I started at about 35,000, and I went on LifePak Nano, and I actually, over a period of about 4 months, increased my score from about 35,000 to about 70,000. So it certainly worked for me, and I didn't have to get the money back from the company. I pay for the nutraceuticals, and if my score didn't go up, the company allegedly, if that's ever happened to me, but the company will actually reimburse you for the for the nutraceuticals. Here's Dr. Oz. This you can see online. It's really very, very cool. He looked at his audience, and his audience are not peaking in the center where we want them to, and they're certainly not doing very, very well over here with high carotenoid scores. Most of them, 90%, are actually in the low carotenoid score. Now this video, or this something that you can find on YouTube, was actually done just for cancer. He didn't want to get involved with other diseases, other systemic diseases. So this is a cancer expert. So they're saying high carotenoid levels will reduce your risk of cancer. Low carotenoid levels will increase your risk of cancer. Now, we know it goes beyond cancer. Dr. Oz didn't want to get too involved with that. But in reality, we know certainly it relates to AMD, age-related macular degeneration. Of course, there are other variables as well, as we know. Now, Dr. Oz scored 75,000, which is a really high score. He happens to be wearing a purple shirt, and he's also in this platinum area. So he did the best out of like 200 people in his audience. But I've seen him in restaurants in New York City, and he really does eat well. He doesn't seem to drink alcohol, an occasional little bit of red wine. He eats lots of salmon and fresh vegetables, and he doesn't eat a lot of bread and butter. And it's like I spied on him once, happened to be in a restaurant a couple of tables away from him. And his dessert was just fruit. And he exercises every day. He's very, very thin. and he practices what he preaches. So he tells everybody on TV that carotenoids are very powerful antioxidants. Certainly that's true. Low levels are associated with cancer, heart disease, Alzheimer's disease. That's all true also. There's references for those. And high levels protect us from myriad systemic diseases. A good study at Yale that looked at patients over a period of about 9 years or so without any intervention, they showed that patients with high carotenoid scores developed very few systemic diseases over a 9-year period. Patients with low carotenoid scores actually had a much higher rate of myriad systemic diseases. So the folks at Yale School of Public Health are convinced about this. And there are studies out of Harvard, some of the best facilities in the world have looked at carotenoids, and I think everybody agrees that carotenoids are important. Okay, you can't change your genetics, but you can not smoke, of course. You can eat salmon, which is great. Exercise, try to say, you can't change your height, but you can certainly control your weight. Leafy vegetables, some nutraceuticals certainly help. So we can't control the genetics, but there are a lot of other things that we can control. And that's what we should be doing with our patients. Not only for the macular degeneration to reduce their risk of AMD, but also to make them healthier, overall healthier individuals. So I've been using a scanner. I actually use it more on students and ODs than I do on patients. And we have some issues because at SUNY we run on all our students. And our experience was with patients that have low scores in ODs and in OD students. Well, number one is poor nutrition. Then we find a bunch that smoke. They still smoke. And smoking is certainly associated with low scores. So smoking, there's so many free radicals that you have to worry about. Then you need more carotenoids and more antioxidants, to sort of cover up for the fact that you're really smoking so much. So we know that, but some of these people are closet smokers. They don't smoke in front of anybody else. They have low scores and they say they don't smoke, but you catch them every once in a while smoking. So that's very interesting. We also have seen it in confirmed cancer patients. One of our ODs at a meeting, he had low scores and he whispers in my ear he has cancer. Another OD at the same meeting told me he had low scores and he said he was a cancer suspect and being worked up. At a small meeting in New York, about 2 years ago, we actually tested everybody in a local society. And 2 doctors I know who really eat well as I know them had low scores. And then we talked about the fact that they probably have malabsorption syndromes. So a lot of people don't know. They think they're eating well, which they are, but they may not be absorbing it. And this gets into this LifePak nano story. Steve may go into that a little bit more. But the nanoparticles will pass through the gut, even though eating really healthy fruits and vegetables and salmon. So a lot of that may not make it. And we've seen patients who are HIV and have AIDS who have low scores. Then we have a category 7. There are some patients with low scores that we've never figured out what's going on. We like to follow them to make sure that they're not developing some kind of a cancer. But we're very concerned about low scores for all these kinds of reasons. The scanner revolution started, pretty much at the turn of the century, took up half the room. And this company, Pharmanex, allegedly, I haven't counted, but I understand they spent $120 million developing the scanner over the next 15 years or so. And it keeps on getting smaller and easier to use. And this student of mine, she then became a resident. And as a resident, still being at SUNY, every time she would see me in the elevator or on a clinic floor, she said, "You have this scanner in the building. I want you to test me again. I want to see how much higher my scores are because I've changed my diet. I'm doing everything I'm supposed to do." So really, sometimes a low score is really very, very good motivation for somebody to do a better job. And the concept of numbers is important. People know that what a high cholesterol number is, and if you have a really high number, 300, 400, you're going to do something about it. Bone density, you want high numbers, not low numbers. Cholesterol testing, of course, want low numbers. And for glucose, we know that we don't want very high numbers there. So that's measuring measurement makes markets, but perhaps as important as measurement changes behavior. So the scanner, this new biomarker, can change behavior, and that's my experience. It really does. So the new biomarker, it's the only validated non-invasive antioxidant instrument, a money-back guarantee if LifePak or G3 doesn't improve your antioxidant levels. I think, Steve, it's within 2 months, but you'll correct me on that. And it's endorsed by lots of people, including the father of antioxidants, this fellow, Professor Packer from UC Berkeley. Okay, getting back here, it's really important to note the connection. So yes, we're measuring carotenoids in the palm. And only 15 in the human body, and those are the ones we're measuring pretty much. Now that will correlate with the carotenoid levels in the serum, in the blood, okay, but also will correlate with what's going on in the macula. So in a sense, you're doing something, and patients may say, "Why are you doing this?" And you can tell them there's really a connection between the number one cause of blindness in the United States, age-related macular degeneration, and carotenoid levels, and we know that. And this is a simple way of getting an idea whether people have high carotenoid levels. And if they do, then they probably have high levels of the three macular pigments that we spoke about: lutein, zeaxanthin, and meso. Accepted by the scientific community, yes. New York Academy of Sciences. Before we mentioned New York Academy of Medicine, and the very prestigious groups, and everybody that's looked at this really feels it's in everybody's interest. This is a this is a Harvard paper where they actually looked at women with breast cancer and women who don't have breast cancer, and high levels of carotenoids were backed for breast cancer risk reduction. So if you have high levels of carotenoids, you're probably going to lower your risk of cancer. If you have low levels of carotenoids, you're probably going to increase your risk of cancer. Optometrists are very good at evaluating patients and recommending things, and reevaluating the patient a little bit later. Let's say measuring pressure is going to be giving the patient some drops to lower the pressure, seeing the patient again. And it's sort of the same here. You want to measure the score, and if the patient has low scores will define differently. I would say under 40,000 is low, and I think those you should probably do something about. Patients at 40 to 50,000, I don't think you really have to push it too much. But certainly change lifestyle if you can. A healthy diet, of course, exercise, lose weight, don't smoke, which is very critical. And again, if you're going to take some pills, LifePak Nano is the one that I use. My wife actually teaches at Columbia in the graduate program, and she teaches a lot of this stuff. And she's gone through all the vitamins out there, and she tells me I have to take it. She takes it, and we also use another one, which I'll show you in a couple of moments. And we pay for it, by the way. We pay the same numbers, the same amount as everybody else. I do not get it for nothing. Of interest, sometimes patients say, "Gee, it's a little bit expensive. Why don't I just go to Walgreens or Walmart or Target or GNC and get something which is going to be cheaper?" Turns out, in New York, the New York Attorney General did some studies on this, and they showed that what's in some of these products that you'll see on the market, these four major chains, have fake ingredients. This is all published. For example, you can look over here and you want to know about the DNA of fruits and vegetables, and the match is only 22% of the time with a GNC product. Here it's only 4% of the time. Walmart, that's really incredible. DNA matched its label identification only 4% of the time. So in New York, the Attorney General had all these products removed from the shelf. So I don't really believe in a lot of the stuff that's over that we can buy relatively cheap over there. You never know what's in it, and there are all sorts of contaminations in it. And this is all this whole list of citations is very easy to get from us if you want to look at that. Okay, so what did the Shermans do? My wife and I, we do take LifePak Nano. We do take this one over here, which is sort of like, if you can read it, it's sort of related to LifePak Nano, a little bit different. Age-related, sort of like to try to prevent aging, and there's a whole research on this that we're not going to go into now. And the other thing I really suggest is this. This is patients that have intermediate AMD. They can test themselves at home. If you have a patient with intermediate AMD, they may have a high risk of going on to developing wet macular degeneration. And the problem is they're not going to be in your office every week. Here, patients test themselves at home. It takes 3 minutes an eye, 6 minutes. We have one of these in my house. One of the people I live with actually is doing this, and she does it maybe 4 or 5 times a week. And the information goes to a reading center. The reading center knows what you've done for, say, the past month, the past 6 months, the past year. All of a sudden, if you show something different, and it's really based upon vernier acuity, and if you show something different, then if it's twice in a row, then the doctor who prescribed it gets called. The doctor calls in the patient, and sure enough, in our experience, the patient will then have a conversion from dry to wet macular degeneration. Now, this was shown to be useful in the ARIDS-2 study, and because of that, because it worked in the ARIDS-2 study, it's actually approved by the FDA and Medicare. Medicare will pay for this, which is really great. Okay, so that's a short synopsis of the carotenoids. We talked about the eye. We talked about beyond. We did speak about some of the, the concept of genetics really being important, but we have to go beyond genetics because you can't change the genetics, but a lot of other things we can change. Okay, so I think I'm handing this back to Steve. Is that
Yeah,
right?
thank you so much, Jerry, for joining us. And if you don't mind standing by, that way, if we have any questions, we can have you field some of those. Again, there's a chat section of this webinar where you guys can submit questions there. And at the end of this webinar, we will address those. And so, Dr. Sherman talked about the carotenoids, not just in eye health, but also in cancer, Alzheimer's, a lot of other issues that are going on in the body. And so why are carotenoids so significant? Well, they fight off these free radicals, which I think we all know what they are, and antioxidants, of which carotenoids are the front line of defense, and the antioxidant network are really combating that and keeping the cells healthy. And so when we start to look at their role in the cell, this is a cross-section of the cell here with your phospholipid bilayer, your membrane, your DNA and nucleus is inside. And the carotenoids are actually fit very nicely within this phospholipid bilayer to prevent free radical damage, because that membrane is not just there to, be almost like a bag to keep things in, but it actually serves as a lot of function with cellular communication and molecules moving within and outside the cell. There's hormone receptors within this membrane. So when it gets oxidized, it actually causes dysfunction of that cell, which leads to cell death and disease, not just in the eye, but throughout the rest of the body. Every single cell in your body is protected by these carotenoids within the cell membrane. And so the more of them you have, they act as a shield, the more protected the cell is going to be. What's also interesting about carotenoids is that when they get oxidized, they not only act as antioxidants, but they also act as signaling molecules to the nucleus to really upregulate the production of intrinsic antioxidants. So essentially, the cell's under attack, these carotenoids start to get damaged and oxidized, and then they act as molecules basically to tell the nucleus that the cell's under attack and to start upregulating glutathione and superoxide dismutase, which is intrinsic cellular antioxidant, which I think is some very interesting research here. So what this scanner technology does is it measures the density of these carotenoids in the tissue, which is far more accurate than measuring in the blood and more reliable, and it's far more accurate than a lot of the other devices that are more subjective on the marketplace. This is very reproducible and backed by 85 clinical studies. Now, if you do a literature search on the role of carotenoids or antioxidants and oxidative stress and name the disease, whether it's Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, cancer, stroke, pain, I mean, you can see the number of studies that have been published talking about the role of these carotenoids and antioxidants in these diseases. So in eye care, what's great about optometrists is not only are you the first line of defense for eye care, but there's a lot of other help that you can provide to your patients in addition to eye health by helping your patients boost their carotenoids and overall nutrition in the body. So we have a lot of issues that are taking place in healthcare. It's not just macular degeneration, but cancer and heart disease rates are out of control, and diabetes and obesity. And the more patients get exposed to the importance of nutrition, the more of an impact it's going to make, and we'll see a much healthier population as we focus more on nutrition, because diet and lifestyle is the #1 cause of preventable disease, and it's one of the things that's really missing within healthcare. And this biophotonic scanner and nutraceutical line really empowers physicians to address this in an objective way that really fits the medical model very nicely. And when we really talk about what's happening in healthcare and we start to survey physicians, nobody's really happy with prevention in healthcare. The system is really based on disease management. And I think that if we can focus more on prevention, we'll see much more health in America. And reimbursements are always challenging and becoming more challenging for practitioners. And physicians are now working harder and harder and harder, which is, decreasing quality of life and family time and vacation and all the other things that we all pay at a very big price to get our education. And what we want to do is really solve these three things with this program by empowering physicians to focus more on prevention, improve cash revenue streams that's not dependent on insurance, and by having income streams that are coming in that also are not tied to the office visit, which I'll talk to you about, that also helps improve lifestyle too. So when someone does get their score, they'll get a baseline score wherever that is, and I'll show you what those scores look like. But they'll get the initial score. People will start on some recommendations that you'll make. The Pharmanex products are the only ones that have been proven and guaranteed to increase antioxidant scores objectively within 60 days. So you'll test your patient, start them, if they score low, start them on the nutraceuticals and make some other general diet recommendations. Bring them back in 2 months to get retested, and then in about 4 to 6 months, they'll see maximum saturation. And so not only is this great for addressing nutrition in the practice and bringing in revenue, but it's also a great way to reactivate patients that haven't been in for a while. It's a great way to have your patients coming into the office on a more frequent basis. And in addition to just trying to deal with eye disease, this adds a wellness component to the practice, which represents, a much bigger piece of the pie when it comes in when it comes into healthcare. And so when these patients come back in, they may purchase a pair of sunglasses or something else as they're coming through the door. So there's a lot of great things it can do to help build the practice too. So these are the scores here. Red is low, which is a bad score. Ideally, optimally, we want people to be over 50,000, and that's based on 30 million scans that we've done worldwide. We know people that have healthy diets and behaviors are going to score in these upper scores ranges. We know the average American is relatively poor in this orange zone. Smokers are in the red zone, diabetics, chronically ill patients, and children, unfortunately, tend to be in the red zone because of their diets. And what we can find is that on the Life Pack and the genetic product I'll talk about, we can more than double people's scores and provide that antioxidant protection and health benefits of having high levels of antioxidants. My personal score started at 31,000 in this low yellow zone, and I wanted to beat Dr. Oz, and so I got to 90,000 has been my record. I typically average around 80,000, but I have been as high as 90. And when we can measure things, that's when we can manage it. It's really fun to see people get competitive. I mean, even my children, since they were 2 years old, understood what their score meant and how to improve it, and were eating healthier because they were competing with each other. And if children can understand it, we can certainly get adults motivated to understand it and do something about it. And so a little bit about the company that makes the supplements is a company called Pharmanex. There are a lot of nutraceutical companies that are out there, and can be very confusing. When I came out of school and was studying for my boards, I was trying to do research on which brands to recommend, and there's so many of them out there. And what attracted me to Pharmanex initially was I saw that testing device that they had acquired, which was originally developed independently from the NIH grants to screen for risk factors of macular degeneration, and it was developed at the Moran Eye Institute and the University of Utah, completely independent of Pharmanex. They just happened to see the value of it and have the funds to bring it to market and commercialize it, where at first it was just used for research purposes, and about $130 million later, it's something that now is easily can fit into the practice. The device is about half the size of a football and very, very easy to operate. And so the company that's behind the science here, because I wanted to really understand these supplements and why, who is Pharmanex, why should I recommend their brand? And the three founders are actually very impressive. Michael Chang was the former director of chemistry at Merck for 15 years. The other founder, Joseph Chang, came from Wyeth. He invented some major drugs for organ transplants and photocancer drugs and an arthritic drug. And then Carl Gerasi is known as the father of the birth control pill. So these aren't, a couple of buddies getting together starting a supplement company. These are really top-notch research scientists in the pharmaceutical world. And their role in pharma was really understanding natural medicine and really using that to discover new drugs. So they were in the drug discovery phase and had researched about 50,000 plant samples in their careers to discover and develop new medicines. And they really just got fed up with pharma because they had all this data that the role of natural medicine and how it could work better than a lot of the drugs. And the data was showing it worked better without the side effects. But pharma won't produce natural products typically because you can't patent them. So they decided to leave pharma and start Pharmanex. It was the largest nutritional startup ever. And now they employ about 100 full-time scientists, 100 scientists. It's by far the largest research engine in the nutraceutical industry. About half of those scientists are PhDs. And this is their laboratory facility. It's a $150 million innovation center that they built about 4 years ago. And this is an incredible company. I've been able to tour the facilities and learn a lot about their quality control that they do. And the level of quality control that they're doing is far above and beyond anything else that I had seen by some of the competitors out there. The technology has been published in research from Stanford University. Jerry had mentioned a study by Yale, which was a 10-year study concluding that knowing your carotenoid score with this device is a biomarker of health related to diet and lifestyle. Texas Tech Medical School's got several devices. Jerry's using it up in SUNY. It's got published in ARVO, and it's based on Nobel Prize winning science. Pharmanex was also awarded Most Innovative Company by the American Business Awards along with Apple Computer for the innovation of this device. And Jerry also talked about how it's been featured on a whole episode on Dr. Oz. The genetic research, the Discovery Channel did a whole documentary at their headquarters that they filmed, and we'll be happy to get a copy of that to you if you'd like to. It's really fascinating research that we're doing in gene expression science and nutrigenomics. And the Pharmanex product line was the first nutraceutical company to get the approval to sponsor the U.S. Olympic team. Their products are NSF certified. They're in the physician's desk reference. And this is a Forbes top 100 most trustworthy company, top rated company. This is a company that you can trust, you can rely on. They do the right thing. And I've been very happy with them as I've been working with them over the last 14 years. And so we talked about the role of antioxidants in eye health and overall health. And obviously we understand the importance of micronutrients and general nutrition. And this new area that we're going into is gene expression, really how the genes are functioning and how that relates to disease and the aging process. There's actually a way now to measure gene expression using these gene chips. And there was some very interesting research that was done on aging and age-related diseases at the University of Wisconsin, where they actually figured out a way to slow down aging and reduce these age-related diseases by 90%. And the researchers then went and thought, well, maybe something's happening with a gene expression standpoint with these studies that we're seeing. And they went and reanalyzed the data. And what they did is they made a groundbreaking discovery that when you're young, your genes function in a certain way. And when you get older, the gene expression changes dramatically. And these researchers formed a company called LifeGen, which was later acquired by Pharmanex. And what they're able to do now is really develop a whole new class of nutraceuticals based on targeting gene expression. Nobody else in the world can do this. And actually on March 13th, we're going to have another webinar with Dr. Stuart Richer, who will be our guest speaker. That webinar will be March 13th at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And we're happy to get some invites out to you guys on that. But the topics of that will go into a lot more detail about the role of nutrition and this very exciting epigenetic research here. But this has led really to a groundbreaking product called AgeLock Youth, which targets 1,000 genes in the body to basically reset your entire genome, make it go back to how it was when you were younger and healthier. And this is all backed by peer-reviewed studies. We can also show the benefits of this, improving antioxidant scores, which can be easily measured in your practice with the biophotonic scanner. And so we'll talk more about that on our next webinar, or can email you some information about that. And in addition to what it's doing for the epigenetics, this is actually what it's doing in the brain. So Jerry talked a little bit about the role of carotenoids in brain health. Well, now we really understand the role of genetics in brain health. And at the bottom here, this is basically a gene map or a gene expression signature of what your cerebral cortex looks like when you're old. And then above this here, or actually at the very top, this is old tissue that's been basically preserved through these caloric restriction studies that were done. And so this is really what a youthful expression looks like at the top. And then with the AgeLock Youth product, which is in the middle here, you can see how it mimics that youthful gene expression. And so in addition to this, we're seeing improvements in functional brain MRI scans that were done at the University of Utah with this product in as little as 8 weeks. And these are some of the studies that were done here, really showing with, this is the control group. These are human brains. And the area here is the amount of brain activation for the control group. And then on the right-hand side here, you can see larger areas of activation, which is showing how we're seeing improvements in brain function in just 8 weeks with this age-locked youth supplement. And so our goal really here is to empower you and your patients to really focus more on nutrition and the role of that in eye disease as well as overall health. We believe that this scanner is really the catalyst towards wellness that physicians as well as patients have been looking for, because it's very simple, easy, and backed by a tremendous amount of research. And our goal is really to place these devices in about 5% of the market, at least initially, which would be about 50,000 scanners. And we believe with about 5% market penetration, we will be able to really change the world of health, not just in the US, but around the world too, and add some significant value to practice. From the revenue standpoint here, and by the way, we have about 2,000 devices right now in healthcare practitioners' offices, and so we've got a lot of room to grow here, and we hope that you'll see the value in bringing this into your practice. The revenue stream is on testing. So there's a revenue for testing, which you'll collect in the office. That's cash. And then when you recommend these supplements, those are shipped in the mail, or you can sell them out of the office. But most offices will just have us ship it to their patients and do the billing for them. You generate residuals from the products that the patients are purchasing. So if you're testing 5 patients a day, you've got $25,000 a year coming in just in testing fees. Obviously, if you're doing 10 or 15 patients a day, you can see significant revenue, which is all cash coming in from just a $20 scan. And the data shows that out of the 30 million people we've tested, 94% of the people fail the test. 94% fail. So, and we would expect that when you look at what people are eating. But now that we can measure it, we can actually start to create the awareness to fix it. So the clinical data suggests that everyone should get scanned and monitored on a regular basis. And the products that Pharmanex makes have a near 100% response rate within 60 days that we can improve those scores rather significantly. And then as the patients go on the supplements, they receive them in the mail on a monthly basis. So every 100 patients on the supplements adds about $35,000 of additional revenue. This is in addition to the testing fees. So this is money that's currently being sent out the door to GNC or the health food store or the local pharmacy. And this is just a much better way of doing it by being able to test, have products that work, that are in the PDR, and can be retested. Jerry had talked about, really a lot of the risk involved with just recommending PreserVision, because upwards of 20% of the patients actually do 3 times worse on that product, and the only way is by doing a genetic test. So what's nice about the Pharmanex product line is they do not have a 80 milligram of zinc, which is potentially dangerous for a lot of your patients. They use a low zinc formula, and then they have other products that are comprehensive as well. So the way that you get started in the business is it's a small investment of about $3,400. You get about $2,500 worth of supplements to use for you and your staff, or you can resell them if you want to. We include 300 scans with your initial investment. You get a personalized e-commerce website. You get attendance to our national training that we do, which is a great seminar. And you also get all of the training and support. This is all a turnkey system that's very easy to integrate. And we will coach you and teach you how to do this in your practice until it's working really, really well. Again, I've been doing this for 14 years, and so we've had tremendous success with this. The only overhead that you'll have with the scanner is $120 a month, and that covers your insurance on the device. If it ever breaks, when new models come out, software updates, that's all included in that. And then they give you an additional 50 scans per month. After that, if you do more than 50 scans, it's about $1.50 to do the test. So, your first 6 scans cover the monthly fee. Everything after that for the month is profit before you've even sold any of the product there. So what we have here is we've got a couple physicians that we're going to hear from. And I just want to do a sound check and see if we've got Dr. Townsend with us. Dr. Townsend?
Crabtree, Dr. Crabtree.
Oh, I'm sorry. Dr. Crabtree, are you with us?
Hi. Yes, you have me here.
Sorry, Dr. Townsend was on our last webinar that we did, but Dr. Crabtree has had the scanner for, I think, about 6-7 months or so. He's done some really some great work in his practice, helping a lot of his patients. He's been in practice for over 20 years. I'll let him kind of share his experience and a little bit about himself, because I think it's always great to hear the research. It's always great to hear kind of the business overview, but I think it's always a great idea to hear from practitioners that are actually using the technology and product line in their practice. So Dr. Crabtree, thanks for joining us.
Oh, thank you very much, Steve, and thank you, Jerry, for your expertise tonight as well. Yeah, as you mentioned, I have monitored and measured macular pigment levels for over 15 years. I initially used a flicker photometry method, just subjective and somewhat crude. So when this came along, when I saw the scanner and how it worked, it was like going from black and white to HD, just a totally different world, just smooth, quick, easy, consistent, and the technology was just so superior to anything I'd used before. And then after researching the nutraceuticals that came with the scanner, I saw that they as well were superior to anything I'd used before. And I had, over that 15-year period, had great response from patients who, they're knowledgeable anymore. They hear about lutein and zeaxanthin and how it affects macular degeneration. So I found myself utilizing cases of nutraceuticals every month, and I was thrilled with that, but had no idea how it could even evolve beyond that until I acquired the Pharmanex scanner, and then introduced the nutraceutical line that they have, because essentially, even though we've used the ocular nutraceuticals for decades, what Pharmanex offers is so far above and beyond that, and much of that you've covered tonight. The studies that are showing that the carotenoids in our antioxidant base are not just relevant when it comes to the macula, but they play a key role with cancer, heart disease, diabetes, dementia. There's so much more there. And so what I found is I found myself just having conversations with patients, really more than anything, just educating. And they were amazed with the scanner as well. They were very intrigued. They wanted to know their scores, wanted to see where they're at. And as you mentioned, Steve, so many of them are far below levels that we would like to see. And so as I talked to them then about the Pharmanex nutraceuticals and what was available, they can't wait to get started. It's something that even as a practitioner, I've had some say, well, I don't know about selling nutraceuticals. I don't find it that way at all. I find it as more of an education for the patients, and as they learn more, they just want to buy it. You don't really have to sell it. You can facilitate that for the patient. But I was very, very pleased with the scanner, with the nutraceuticals, and what it's done. And I really had no idea about the revenue stream when I introduced it to my office. And it's been so successful that it's hard not to want to spread the word to your colleagues about it, because I truly believe this elevates our profession. This is something that is tailor-made for us, and I think it's something that as the years go by, we're going to have more and more practitioners utilizing this. But I don't have enough good things to say about the program, about the product, and I think what it does for our profession, especially as private practitioners who are facing the headwinds of $7 glasses and online exams and contact lens warehouses and cuts in insurance, to be able to provide something that really allows us to serve as healthcare providers and do something so well, so positive for our patients, and at the same time be rewarded for it, and be able to solidify your financial basis of your practice. It's just a win-win, and I could not be more pleased with what it's done for me and my practice.
Well, thanks, Dr. Crabtree, for sharing that. And if you don't mind staying on as well, and that way, if we do have any questions, we can field those. So if you guys have any questions, feel free to chat in the chat box there. Just click on that little bubble icon there, and you'll be able to send us some questions. And what we're going to do is we're going to move over to Columbus, Ohio, and we have Dr. Andy Feltz here with us, and he's got a video feed from his home there. And Dr. Feltz is actually he's an optometrist as well. He's the director of the largest mobile healthcare company, and he's been integrated the scanner into his personal practice and has been expanding it within the company with some of his colleagues and so forth. And Dr. Feltz, we're happy to have you here with us tonight to share your experience too.
Well, thanks, Stephen, and Trevor. That was great, and Dr. Sherman, I appreciate all the great science you gave us. And the thing that I found is exactly with what Dr. Sherman talked about, which is the scanner changes behavior. So there's something about that number that seems magical to patients. I've been talking to my patients for a long time about nutrition, and I never felt like I got any traction with it. But now that the scanner gives us a number to chase and to track, people are very responsive to it. So I've had the privilege of helping quite a few now colleagues integrate the scanner, the biophotonic scanner, into their practices. And those practices range from small country practices to multi-doctor to suburban locations. So I really believe the scanner will work anywhere if the doctor buys into the science and has a heart for wanting to help people be healthier. It really does, raise the level of our profession to, that frontline healthcare provider, which is what we've always been striving for.
Awesome. Thanks, Dr. Feltz. And so some of the questions that we commonly get is, okay, it's not an expensive thing. I know there's equipment that's $30,000, $40,000, $80,000 that a lot of physicians will bring into the practice. This one's $3,400. How long did it take you to get a return on investment? Maybe we'll start with Dr. Crabtree.
With my initial investment, I think that I was able to achieve executive level within, 11 days at the practice. And within the first, 25 days, I was able to basically recoup my investment, and it's been a positive cash flow ever since. And I don't think you can overemphasize what the revenue potential is. And as exciting as that is, that most of us who participate in this still see, the greater good in what we're doing for our patients. But the revenue with all of the other hits that we're taking from other directions is certainly a real plus for our profession, and I think we deserve it.
Yeah. Dr. Feltz, I know you've got a practice that you own as well, and maybe you can share, your ROI if you'd like.
Yeah, you're looking at about a 10-time return on your investment by the end of the year, which is what we're tracking towards, which I don't know of any other piece of equipment you can do that with. So you have to have an OCT, you have to spend the 30, 40 grand for it, but you're not going to get 10 times back in 12 months. And that's what we're seeing with the scanner. And it's fun. It's added something fun to talk to our patients about that we can really make a difference in as well. So making money's fun, but also helping people as well.
Yeah. And then as far as the integration process, I know we're all busy as physicians, and tell us a little bit about that integration process, and then maybe if you can share, one of the other questions we get is, how much time does it take to add something else to the workflow in the pre-test room?
I'll take that one. The test itself takes 30 seconds. It's just another test in the pre-test room, so it really doesn't add a lot there. And we train our optometrists on some talking points so you can keep this discussion, concise and not mess with, the rest of the workflow that you have in your practice. We don't want to turn your optometry office into a nutrition store. We want to add this as another service that you can provide your patients. So really the time has not been a big issue. And if you think about scanning, 5 people a day out of the 20 to 25 that you see, it's only going to add, 5 minutes to your day, something like that.
Awesome. What about you, Dr. Crabtree?
Yeah, I think, we have a video that plays in the waiting room that really introduces the patient to the science of the scanner, the nutraceuticals, and our intake letter basically explains to patients that we believe in this so wholeheartedly that we're going to scan all patients. So the staff member immediately takes the patient back. We scan, and as you've said, it takes 30 seconds. And then immediately upon walking in the exam room, I just have a very brief, honest conversation about, the carotenoids we've used forever for the macula, the nutraceuticals that are available, and based on their score, what would work for them. And as you said, it takes a couple of minutes, and the patients are just thrilled that we're taking the time to have that 2-minute conversation. In the 27 years I've been in practice, I've not introduced anything that has had such a positive response and has been so easy to integrate. And we've done it with other ODs throughout the country. It's a very, very easy system that we've utilized through our integration. The day I received the scanner in my practice, I opened it up, I scanned 10 people, and I signed 5 people up in the program. And we can, our team, including, of course, Steve, Dr. Townsend, Andy, Scott Bennett, we're here to guide any practitioners who want to integrate this into the practice. It's very straightforward, it's very easy, and we can show them how to do it without any difficulty at all.
Great, thank you so much. Anything else that any of you want to add before we move to closing out this webinar? Dr. Sherman?
Well, Steve, I do want to, again, thank you very much for the invite to do this. My role is more of an educator, so I feel as if I try to educate the next generation. And our students all get scanned in one of our third-year labs. It's one of about 15 technologies that we teach. And they sort of really understand it. And it really has changed behavior amongst our students. Some of our students take it home. They say, Dr. Sherman, I use it for the weekend. They bring it home and show their family. And sure enough, then all of a sudden, everything changes at home because you get a couple of low scores of family members. Mom says, I'm throwing all this junk out of the, you're not going to eat it anymore. We're going to have carrots and celery and that kind of stuff. So not everybody's happy with that aspect of it, but it's certainly making people healthier.
Awesome. And so is this something that you really recommend that optometrists, should be integrating as a routine screening test?
Absolutely.
Awesome.
It makes no sense not to do it. And again, the connection is very clear. That one paper that we spoke about, that one presentation, that this 30-second test is giving you a number that correlates with the macular pigment, with the lutein zeaxanthin and mesozeaxanthin, which is very, very useful for macular degeneration. But of course, we have to look at it from a holistic point of view, the entire patient, and not just macular degeneration.
Thank you. And Dr. Feltz, anything else that you want to add before we close out?
No, I appreciate the opportunity. Thanks, Stephen.
All right, perfect. Well, we don't have any questions here, so it looks like you guys either aren't able to submit your questions for some reason, or we did a great job here tonight from an educational standpoint. I want to thank Dr. Sherman for joining us, Dr. Crabtree and Dr. Feltz as well. And really, next steps would be to contact the person that invited you into the webinar. Whether it was a friend of yours or whether you received an email, look up the person that you got that email from and reach out to them and talk to them about if you have some questions about the science, you want to go over a free assessment of the financial impact that this can have on your practice based on your workflow. And then we can help you get started with the program. Thanks again for joining us tonight. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
You are my best friend and we've got some things to do.
more.
Yeah,
Yo, you wanna meet me at the lounge?
yeah,
Yo, you wanna meet me in the club?
yeah.
Yo, you wanna meet me downtown?
Okay.